Well, coalitions may provide smaller parties with a voice, but if they're formed only to unseat the ANC and have wide ideological differences, they of course run the risk of falling apart. And what we've seen is that in the end, service delivery suffers. Well, let's speak about some of the important lessons that have been learnt out of the 2016 local government elections and the subsequent coalition governments that were formed. We're joined by the Nelson Mandela University political analyst, Dr. Ntsikelelo Breakfast. Dr. Breakfast, good evening to you, and thank you so much for your time. Of course, Nelson Mandela Bay becomes one of those case study examples of how coalitions can go wrong. What have been the biggest lessons you think that have come out of those arrangements, and how we can apply it nationally?
Well, I think, Caty, what gives rise to coalition formations is political fragmentation and lack of majoritarianism. I think there are both strong points and weaknesses about power sharing. So one of the strong points is that if you have power sharing, political power tends to be limited, meaning that no political party can abuse its power, or no political party can impose its agenda on all and sundry. So meaning that in order for decisions to be made, there has to be consultation across the board. And that, in my view, does deepen democracy. But the flip side of the coin is that from time to time, when you have coalition formations, you normally see deadlocks. And if you have a deadlock on matters of budget, it means that services cannot be rendered, because the issue of budget at local government level is linked to the IDP, which is an expression of the needs of the municipality. So I'm saying that there are strong points and there are also weaknesses. But one of the weaknesses, again, is the fact that these power sharing arrangements, they tend to epitomize opportunism, musical chairs, and so on.
And that's often the difficulty, right? Because when you have a lot of small different players that are holding, maybe not significant seats, but can make a significant impact, oftentimes their horse trading is about what they get out of it, and not necessarily how they're going to push the political parties to ensure that they adhere to what the requirements of those communities that they're in are.
Yeah, I think the challenge is that, in my view, there seems to be a missing link of power sharing arrangements and some conflict management provisions, in the sense that one of the weaknesses of the Constitution is that it doesn't talk about how to manage these power sharing arrangements. So the political elite, they have a tendency to rush into joining forces without developing a conflict management mechanism to deal with their own contradictions. So I think the way out is to amend the Constitution. If that is a long route, then there needs to be a piece of legislation that all political parties can abide by.
What would that piece of legislation have to say in order to create or foster an environment of greater stability within these agreements?
First of all, Caty, it will have to include the issue of public participation, because what is democracy? In a few well-chosen words, it's government of the people, by the people, and for the people. So some people are arguing that as things stand, the current approach that is employed by political parties across the political spectrum is undemocratic, because you vote for a political party because of the commitment that the party made to you as the electorate. Therefore, a political party cannot go behind your back and enter into a coalition arrangement without your knowledge. So the issue of public participation should be at the heart of these power sharing arrangements. But I think also there is a need for an independent body to look at the differences of these power sharing arrangements.
But as it stands, already our local government space creates a lot of room for public participation. It's supposed to be happening, that councillors are giving feedback to their community every 3 months, but there simply is very little adherence to that. You talk about the IDP process. We often know that, you know, budgets are passed, priorities are set, but with very little input from the broader community because of how these politics are arranged and set up to exclude people rather than to include them.
You are on point, Caty. You've hit the nail on the head on that score, that there is a forum, or there are forums for public participation, like, for instance, ward committees and so on, even though those ward committees are falling apart throughout the length and the breadth of the country. But the issue is that it must be borne in mind that South Africa doesn't have a long-standing history of power sharing. It's a new phenomenon in the form of coalitions. You know, it comes from, in my view, from Europe, from Holland, from Germany, from Greece, and so on. In the early 1900s, we've seen the power sharing arrangements, very few in 1924, when we had the PACT government, and also in 1933. But after that, the National Party dominated the political landscape until the ANC rose to prominence, and then we started seeing these coalition formations in the early 2000s. So coalition formations are a recent phenomenon. That's why I'm saying that maybe the founding fathers and mothers of the Constitution omitted the provisions of conflict management to deal with these contradictions of political parties, because they never anticipated that, you know, there won't be one party dominance.
What do you forecast as, you know, what could be the potential allegiances that are struck following this local government elections? Do you foresee a situation where we'll see some minority governments, given the extent to which we have some political parties already coming out to say that they will not be working with the ANC?
Yeah, I don't think that these power sharing arrangements are based on ideological proximity or ideological similarities. I mean, we saw after 2016 the EFF joining forces with the DA. I was taken aback by that, because the ideological proximity of the EFF is closer to the ANC as opposed to the DA. So these power sharing arrangements are an expression of what Professor Susan Boysen calls marriages of inconvenience. They're not based on principles. They're based on, you know, musical chairs. That's why some political parties, they get seats to be part of, you know, the mayoral committee. The following day, they jump ship when they get better offers.
All right, we're going to leave it there then for tonight. Political analyst from the Nelson Mandela University, Dr. Ntsikelelo Breakfast.